Hello, Art One. How are you guys? Mrs. E here checking in and wanting to give you guys a little bit more further instruction on this week's assignment. So I want to go over a couple of different things with you guys in your second assignment. So after your value scales are drawn, you guys are going to go into your second assignment folder into the drawing and shading basic forms. And when you're in with the drawing and basic shading forms, you're going to go ahead and click on the shading light and basic forms video here. And I'm not going to have you guys watch the whole video, but you are going to watch how Stan Proco talks about shading light and form basic. So after you view that, you are then to watch the Art One Shading Objects video. And in this video, the artist is going to draw four basic forms, three-dimensional forms. He's going to draw the cone shape, the cube shape, the sphere shape, and the cylinder shape. And what I want you guys to do is to go ahead and follow along with him to shade those basic shapes. Okay, so you can see right here how he has finished the cone shape, and he has his light source coming from this direction. Here's the highlight. Here is the shadow. Here is your core shadow, your cast shadows coming off behind the cone object. And then he erased a little bit right in here for the reflective light. So we'll go ahead and watch him draw one more object, and then you guys can finish the rest on your own. He's using the cross-hatching technique on the square shape to shade in his object. Okay, so here is the cube finished. So his light source is coming more from this direction, kind of back and here. And you can see his core shadow is right here. His shadow is along here. The highlight is actually, you can't even see the highlight because it's on the back part that is hidden, that you don't see of the cube. Okay, he's got a little bit of reflected light right here and a little bit of reflected light down here, and you can see the cast shadow down here. So he'll continue to go ahead and draw the sphere as well as the cylinder shape on there, and you guys can go ahead and follow along with those and draw those on your own and then submit it in the discussion board page after you take a photo of your image. Okay, once you have your four objects drawn, sorry, you're gonna sort of see me on here. Once you have your four objects drawn, you are going to then choose four objects from your house that represent those four basic forms of the cube shape, the cylinder shape, the sphere shape, and the cone shape. So I have gone around my house and I have found four basic objects. So I have the tissue box, whoops, for my cube shape. I have the Coca-Cola bottle here for my cylinder shape. I have an Easter egg here for my sphere shape. It's more of an oval sphere, but we'll go with it. And then I have in this vase here, this flower that is more of a cone shape. So we are going to use the flower here as our cone shape, okay? And what you want to do is you want to go ahead and set up a little table with a lamp next to you, or somewhere where you've got some good light shining on your object. And you're going to study how the light plays on that object and draw your 4 objects onto another page in your sketchbook, and draw the components of value, and shading them with it on your object. Okay, so we are going to start off with our first object here of the sphere or the egg shape. And I'm going to go ahead and section off my sheets of paper into 4 areas so that I have my 4 areas for my drawings, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and study the light form on my egg, okay? So with the light shining here, my highlight is right here on my egg. My shadow is coming down along here. My cast shadow is right here on the egg, okay, coming out here a little bit. And I probably have a little bit of reflected light bouncing off of this table and back up into the sphere of the egg right in here, okay? So I am going to start drawing my kind of oval shape here. And I'm going to stay really loose when I draw my shapes. Loose and light, okay, when I first start drawing my shapes. And then I kind of come back in after I have a good form and I can darken that contour line, which is the outer edge line of the object. I know we haven't really talked about that, but contour line is the outer edge line of the object. So I'm going to go ahead and go over that line a little bit darker, okay? Then from there, I'm gonna go ahead and lay in where I see that highlight coming in, and I can use any of the drawing techniques from the value scales that you saw of the shading and blending, the hatching, the cross hatching, or the stippling to shade my piece. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with the shading and blending technique first, and go ahead and dive in here and shading in this shadow here. Now, in doing this and shading your light to dark values, this is what really makes your form become 3-dimensional and more lifelike, okay, when you shade in your values. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in my cast shadow down here. All right, and with the cast shadow again, usually it is darker along the edge of the object, and as it moves outward from your cast shadow, it is going to become lighter on the outer edge of your shadow. So I'm going to kind of make that lighter on the outer edge of my shadow, just really kind of studying this light and this form. Okay, on there. Now I'm going to come in with my eraser and pull in where I kind of see some of this reflective light here, and pull that reflective light in a little bit. And round these edges just a little bit because it does curve a little bit. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to bring that core shadow in. So that core shadow is going to lie about right here and right along that edge. So it's going to be a little bit thicker right here on the side because of the angle where the light is hitting it. And then my core shadow is going to drop down right along this edge here. So I'm going to pull that in right along the edge. Okay, and there you have it. There is the egg drawing. Now, I'm sure you're wondering and thinking, okay, Mrs. Zebold, from my viewpoint or the way I see that egg versus the way you drew the egg is totally different. And you are correct. So the side where I am sitting at, I have a little bit of a different angle than you guys do. So your angle is a little bit different than my angle. So depending on where your position is or where you're sitting from your object, you are going to see the light play differently on your object depending on where you are sitting. Okay, let's go to our next object. So our next object is the cube, and we are going to do the tissue box here. So I am going to start sketching the shape of my tissue box and how I am perceiving that shape. I'm going to start off with a square here for my shape. Okay, and then I'm going to bring my lines down on my square. And then these are going to angle back this way a little bit. And this one's going to angle forward. All right, so this is kind of the angle that I see my tissue box. Now on the top here, I have an oval shape here. Okay, and then I have my Kleenex kind of coming out of the top here. So I'm going to kind of draw how I see my Kleenex. And I'm going to have some folds in my Kleenex. I'm going to have some Kleenex coming out this way. I'm just going to kind of draw just a line where I kind of see those folds in there. Okay. And then my cast shadow is coming out along here. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of just draw in that line here where I see that cast shadow coming out. Okay. So I'm going to stop there for a minute and I'm going to go ahead and fill in my shadows and then come back out and pull or show you guys where my shadows are. Okay, so I have gone ahead and laid in the shadows for my tissue box, and I want to go ahead and go over them with you, and then we will draw our next object together. So I use the cross-hatching technique to shade in my tissue box here. And if you can see, I have a couple of cast shadows on here. I have the cast shadow coming off of the tissue box on the bottom here, but I also have from the Kleenex the cast shadow that's falling on top of the tissue box. So I also place the cast shadow up here. My core values lie right here and right here. I also have a couple of core shadows in the top of the tissue box, right along the edges of where the tissue goes down inside of the box, as well as along the edge of that cast shadow there. Then I have my shadow coming in here, and I have shadows playing on this tissue here, coming up here. Where the folds are kind of where the darker values are. And then I also have some highlights in there too, where I have left the paper white. Okay, moving on to our third object, we are going to draw the cylinder form, right? When you start drawing bottle forms, I know we haven't really gone over how to draw objects very much. We will try to get into that a little bit more here before you guys do your final drawing for your final project. but you use ellipses to draw the bottle form. So you can kind of use stacked ellipses for the neck. And then as you work your way and the bottle gets wider, you're going to slowly start making your bottle, or your ellipsis, I'm sorry, not your bottle, your ellipsis get wider as you move down. And then they also might taper back in a little bit until you finally kind of reach the bottom, okay? This form's a little bit off of there just because I have run out of space. So like proportion-wise, this really doesn't fit to what the actual Coca-Cola bottle is, but we are going to go with it for today, for right now, just to kind of get the idea. But then you can go back over your ellipse here and go over your outside contour line shape. Okay, so there we have our bottle form here. Once you're done with that, then you can come back in here and you can kind of erase all of your light marks from your ellipsis and drawing your bottle form here. Okay, I'm going to kind of erase those a little bit. And after I erase those, then I can go ahead and start taking a look at observing my bottle and how the shadow or how the light plays on the bottle to create the different shadows. Now, clear glass, or glass in particular, is the hardest to shade. And the reason being is because it's so reflective. Glass reflects light, and in that case, you've got light bouncing off of numerous portions from your surface, your table surface, or from other objects that the light is bouncing back and forth from to create the shadows. Um, like right here, if you guys can see this really bright spot right here, that is reflective light right there. So our highlight is going to kind of be on the back side of this object. So the viewpoint that I'm looking at, I'm not really going to see any of the highlight there. Okay. And kind of the best way to work with shading a clear object is to kind of take it section by section. So what I like to do is I kind of like to lay in lines first, okay, of where I see the shadows. And normally I'll just shade in a very kind of light shading color of where I see the shadows playing on the bottle. So wherever I kind of see just that basic shadow, I'm going to kind of draw a line in and just kind of shade in. And I like to work my way usually either like top to bottom or left to right or right to left or bottom to top. So I work section by section, a little at a time of the bottle to lay in where my shadows are going to be. I find that that is kind of the easiest way, okay? So now I'm going to work on this section right here, since there's kind of like this divided line here, and then I'm going to work this section and then this bottom half section there. And just kind of laying in where I sort of see just those basic shadows coming in. And with the bottle form, what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of reflective light. So it's going to be shadow, reflective light, shadow, reflective light, shadow, reflective light. It's kind of the pattern that it usually takes when you're shading or objects that are of glass or clear appearance. Now, the more like I move and I change my position, the more my light is going to move. My shadows are going to move a little bit. I'm just going to kind of base in. Now, this right here is making that like look more three-dimensional because you can see that clear ellipse right in here on this part of the bottle. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead. Now with the label on here, that's going to make a difference. And there's going to be more of a shadow, a little bit more with the label on here. It goes this way. Now I'm not gonna like draw out like the Coca-Cola. You can if you want to, but I'm pretty much more or less just concerned as far as where those shadows are coming into the object. Okay, so now I'm gonna kind of move down here to my bottom form a little bit. Kind of lay in where I see those shadows. I see that oval on that bottom as well too, because it's a three-dimensional form. Okay, my cast shadows coming off this way. And with my cast shadow, I can see there's quite a bit of reflective light in here within my cast shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of place in where I see those reflections a little bit here. I'm going to shade in those. Now I'm kind of working quickly here and rushing through just because of demonstrating purposes, and you don't want to sit here and watch me take an hour, draw a perfect bottle form to get the idea for it. So I would expect you guys to actually take, a little bit more time with yours as you're drawing out the form and shading in your piece. Okay. So that's just like the start of the bottle form. And then I come back in here and I probably add in where I see more of some darker shadows for my core shadows, coming in and lay in more of those darker shadows after I lay in like my basis for my main shadow. Okay, so that's the bottle form. And the next one that we're going to move to is the cone. Okay, so for the cone shape here, I'm not going to draw like the whole vase portion of it. I'm just going to draw my flower portion. So I'm going to go ahead and draw in this simplistic kind of cone flower shape, the basic shape of my object first. Oh, I kind of see it. I can Draw kind of just the stem coming out here a little bit. Okay. Now, after I have like my basic shape outlined, obviously that's not like what a flower looks like. It looks more like a mushroom right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to then come in and each little petal kind of curves a little bit. So I'm going to go along this outside contour line here, just kind of see where I see some of those curved areas and bring in this curved area of the flower. Okay. Now you are not going to be able to get every little curve exactly how it is. So you just want to kind of look for like the main base curve of the petals. Flowers are very difficult to draw. I think sometimes because people try to capture like every aspect or every little petal of the flower, and that is just not humanly feasibly possible. So you just want to kind of get the like basic kind of curved shape here of where you see those individual petals coming out. Okay. So there I've kind of defined my object a little bit more and made it a little bit more like a flower. Okay, so now moving on. So with shading this, I have like some very distinct lines with the way these petals go, and they kind of crisscross in every little direction. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to kind of place in here where I kind of see these lines curving and crisscrossing shapes here for the cone of the flower. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause and finish my flower and then come back to show you where the shadows lie. Okay, so what I'm doing here a little bit with, now that I have all of my like lines in, X's in, where I see these kind of crisscrossing shapes, I'm going to go back over these so that they are a little bit darker in value. And then I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to start shading in between all of my lines. Because as I'm looking at my cone flower here, all of this top half is in shadow, and just this very bottom half has some reflected light, and all my highlight is actually coming over here and kind of up and underneath this flower because of the flower being positioned a little bit higher than my lampshade coming from my light source. Okay, so then I'm going to kind of just go ahead and finish filling this in. And again, I'm going to pause and come back and finish filling in my flower. Okay, so I went ahead and finished shading my cone shape here, and I want to go over a little bit of how I went about doing it. So I went in and I first made little marks of where I saw those kind of darker shadows, and then I kind of came in and I filled in like one kind of like layer of the shadow of one solid color. And then after that, I came back in and I just really went around those darker forms and just kind of blended everything in together a little bit more so that you could kind of see those lighter to dark areas where these kind of like petals are forming on this flower. Okay, and then you guys probably can't see from your viewpoint, but I can from mine. But there are these little tiny stems coming out of the flower. Okay, and so I put these little dots on it where all of those little parts of the flower, the good nectar part of the flower, is coming out. Okay. So that's my cone shape. So I've got kind of my reflective light coming in down here, my core shadows and my shadow here, a little bit of my shadow here. And then my cast shadow, really, they're kind of, I mean, if it was casting a shadow, it would be casting onto the lampshade here. So I am not going to worry about a cast shadow with this flower because of the way it is positioned in this vase here. All right, so I am going to take my drawings, stick in a little bit here and show them a little bit closer to you guys so you can see them before I sign off here. So that is the bottle shape and the cone flower there. And then we have the egg shape here and the Kleenex box there. Okay. So you're going to draw then 4 different objects and submit those also to the discussion board. So I hope you guys had fun drawing with me today, and I will talk to you guys another day. Have a good one. Bye.